So one way you can think about this is Gallup did a study a few years ago, and what they were looking at was workplace retention rates. They said, what keeps you in a job? The number one question in this huge survey that correlated to how likely it was that a staff member would either stay or quit. And you need the good ones to stay, because when the storm comes, you need the strong rowers, right? You don't need them to all jump out, get in the lifeboat, and the best two of them paddle away and leave the rest to sink.
Exactly.
So how do you keep the best? And how do you build up everybody who's there? The number one question in that entire survey that correlated to staying was, do you have a friend at work? Yes or no? Friends equal engagement. Relationships equals retention for unis. So what we realized was, when we're taking these principles that are complex and we're trying to teach them, it's about relationships. It's about being seen first. It's about feeling safe. And Daniel Coyle teaches in a book called The Culture Code that every team needs three things. They need safety, vulnerability, and purpose. So what we do is we'll take a framework like that, we'll break it down, and then I'll say, okay, say I'm working with a team, a college, a uni. What's your purpose for this year? And they'll be like, well, we don't really know. I'm like, all right. One of my favorite activities, click your fingers. Let's imagine it's a year in the future. Like, go to the calendar, add a year. If you were there, if you woke up tomorrow, what does life look like? What's different? What's the same? What are you keeping, stopping, and starting? And just describe it for me. Dream. Disney said you have to dream first. Dream, believe, dare, and do was his 4-part strategy. But it starts with dreaming. And you've got to be able to see it, right? That's why we say, I have a vision. Like 60% of our brain's visual processing. Like, I have a vision, because you have to see it. So like, we'll take a 3-part Daniel Coyle process, take purpose, and then take people through different strategies and questions for them to try to realize, oh, actually, this is what I want. And often they kind of know it, like they feel it, whether it's a staff, a startup, a uni, or a first-year student. They kind of know, if you really ask them and press them and show an interest, they'll tell you what they want. They take a while sometimes, but they'll get there. I'm like, okay, well, how would we get there? And then we'll progress from that. How do you build a team? How do you chase it, make an action plan? But for everyone, it always starts with, where are you trying to get to? What's the target on the wall? You got to know what you're aiming at, because even if you miss it, it's still pretty good. In Australia, in the first 5 years of starting a business, 9 out of 10 businesses fail. So it's like, you've got to be like, I'm the 1 out of 10. Like, you've got to be crazy enough even to believe it, to have it crack. 9 out of 10 fail. We run a business that's based on these 5 things. I think there's 5. I get in a plane, I fly to another state, I go to a university, I get a big group of people together, and I get them to like high five and shake hands and jump up and down and all that. The plane stopped flying, the borders closed, the uni's shut down, you can't have large groups, no one can touch each other.
Yeah, everything gone.
Gone. I was calling it hashtag cancel everything. So COVID hits, and in a week, we have like 5 or 6 clients go, cancel, 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 cancel. And I'm like, we can't cancel everything because our students need us. And like, it was coming from a place of uncertainty, right? And like fear, but I was like, well, this is the time. And so for us, it's like, leaders stand up. And so that time happened. So not only am I trying to sort of grow the business, but I came to this realization, which is crucial for individual and team growth, is to say, what I know has got me here. But if I want to go to a new place, I need to learn new things. So amongst COVID, amongst like working harder than we ever have, I enrolled and I did this Harvard online course. I was like, this is cool. If we're going to do online learning, I'm going to learn from the best in the world. I did an online course in educational leadership. And what it did was it broke down, it was like a full like uni kind of course style on 1 2x2 matrix, which like the consultant in me loves, like, 2 variables, stretch it out. What are the 4 boxes? How do they work? Beautiful.
Yeah.
And it answered your question. The whole question was around, what's the difference between individuals and groups? And what's the difference between rules and values? So here's how you help the individual versus the group. In school, in uni, it's individual rule focused. They had fancier words for this, but I can't remember them. So like simple, right? Yeah. Einstein said, make things as simple as possible, but no simpler. Rules and individuals. If you're doing maths class, you're doing it as an individual, and there's a right answer and a wrong answer. 99% of our education is individual with rules. And even if it's like abstract, like it's an English essay, the professor marks you. Some abstract external voice with their own values set tells you what's valuable, and you have to fit to theirs. Team, it's a team, but in that quadrant, you know the rules, everyone agrees on the rules, finite thinking, right? Simon Sinek wrote an amazing book this year on finite and infinite games and kind of talked about this. At the end of every game, there's a winner and a loser. In classroom, there's a rank. Who's number one, right? It's significance driven. On the other side of the spectrum that's values based are individuals and teams who base their work on their values. When you start a business, you're on your own. What's success in your business? Simon Sinek says success equals a feeling. Like success in my business if I feel good, if I'm myself, if I'm living up to my values. Challenge. Only I can tell me what my values are. I have to discover them. Like no one can tell me this or that, because what works for me might not work for someone else. What makes you happy might not make me happy, and vice versa. So you've got to figure that out. And then when you do it with a team, it's even harder. And that's where volunteer teams come together. It's where student clubs, it's where we spend 90% of our work, because it's the hardest stuff. You've got to get a group of people to agree on a set of values. So the hardest bit there is to say, you need to decide on a team what you're aiming at. So that's the big thing of individual versus groups, is when it's individuals, it's saying, well, what it is you want as a human? But then of course you need other people, right? And then secondly, as a team, it's saying, well, what do you want as a group? And often that gets too hard and hands get thrown up in the air. What we try to do is say, why are you here? What's in it for you? And who are you trying to serve? And the way we're able to externalize that is we say, pull the locus out of yourself and figure out who you want to help. Because you're all here to help someone. So who are they and what do they need? And if we can get people to focus on that, teams come together and can achieve pretty amazing things. Virtual mentor of mine, and I always consider a mentor anyone I can learn from. So you don't have to necessarily be with them, spend time with them. The world's a pretty amazing place. Podcast, YouTube, video, text, whatever you like. But a virtual mentor of mine, good old Anthony Robbins, one of the best, says, if you ask a better question, you'll get a better answer. All I do as a profession is ask questions. And the challenge is not to make them leading questions, but to make them questions that are genuine. I'll come into a room with people like, I don't know what your goals are. I don't know what the best structure is. I don't know who the high performers are. I don't know the history, the relationships, the politics. But I kind of come in with a fresh slate, and often like a fresh whiteboard, and literally say, all right, well, what are we here for? What do we want? What are we trying to do? And then my job on the back end is to have a huge arsenal of questions, frameworks, quotes, examples, stories that I can relate to people. So it's like, if I can tell somebody, I had a 15-year-old girl in a workshop today, Queensland. She's in a workshop. She got up at the end of the workshop. She gave this speech in front of 20 people she'd never met before, like off the cuff, as part of an activity. And she said something to the extent of, everybody in this town just cares about money. No one cares about the environment. And that's how she ended it. And the metaphor I gave her was, I could have said, are you sure? Is there a nicer way of saying that? But I said, you've got a fire in you. And she was like, yeah. And I'm like, I reckon we should turn up the dial. And she's like, yeah, burn the place down, kind of. She didn't say that. Like, yeah. And I'm like, fire can do one or two things. It can burn something down or it can fuel something. Anger is going to burn something down. Passion's going to fuel something. It's the same energy. You're pissed off, be pissed off. That's cool. But like, channel it. Be smart about it. Put it into an engine. And so when I have that moment with her, you can sort of see the head, she was like, oh, that's different. She's obviously high energy, but I'm like, I don't know, if you're mad about something, like that's good, but are you sure it's true? Can you examine it? How do you know it's true? And then let's turn up the dial on putting you in solution mode, not in problem mode, because anyone can get angry and yell. And if 2020, we look at, you can blame the politicians, you can blame the schools, the unis, you can blame COVID, you can blame countries, states. Like, there's no shortage of people to blame. Like every one finger pointing out, four pointing back. Like, that's easy. It's lazy. It's lazy to blame. It's much harder to go, I'm going to pick a problem and do something about it. So like when we come in, we're always saying, you want to be a leader? That's amazing. You've just taken on responsibility. And our job is kind of to say, what's a responsibility that you would be excited about taking on? Not because it's easy, but because it's meaningful. Yeah, that's a big part of our role, is getting people to say, this is what I want, this is why I want it, and this is what I'm willing to do about it. So it turns into actions and then results. A lot of our content, especially that we're sharing online, comes back to one of our core values, which is add value first. And I think a study was done maybe 15 years ago or so and said the average consumer, to become aware of something and then start considering it or paying attention to it, needed to see something 4 times. 15 years later, it's 16 times. So you need to get a lot more of someone's attention to get them to actually pay attention, to move from, oh, I know you exist, to, oh, I'm going to click on your website or read or think about it. And so for me, I didn't want to play that game. I didn't just want to bulk produce content, right? I wanted to help people. So what we did was we said, all right, what if we just made content that was valuable in and of itself? So like some of our posts will say, hey, this is what we're doing, because we need to tell the world and remind people this is what we do. We run workshops. But 80-90% of it is ebooks, they're videos, it's instructional, they're tips. So when someone sees it, and I'd call all of this like educational content, I'm trying to teach people something. And LinkedIn's an amazing platform now that will get thousands of views per post and sometimes hundreds of downloads on something. So if I make an ebook that's like 10 tips for this or 5 tips for that or the 3-step process to this, then people can download it, they get it for free, they get some value. And just like you give and give and give and give and give the value, eventually if there's something out there, our whole model is B2B. Like we don't charge individuals. Like it's all going through unis or schools or governments. And so what we're really looking for at the start was fans. We wanted people to say, wow, this stuff's interesting. This is cool. Like, come and teach it to us. So like, if people want something practical out of today, if you're making content, who are you making it for? What do they want? What are their goals? And what are their problems? So the more you know about someone, the more you know about what they want, and the deeper you can get into, well, what's holding them back? Then and only then can you make content. And one distinction on that's important, why it goes who, goal, problem. If they didn't have problems, the person would achieve their goal. It's something that we're working on really actively, because I know unis are constantly working on this as well, and students change the things that they want. Steph, who's our head of community, the best person to talk about this, but some of the things that we've kind of championed and run internally would be, there's a mix between online and offline, obviously. So when we're running workshops offline, like in person, people are all excited. And then at the end of them, we run a Facebook group. So we always put a big slide up that says, hey, jump in our Facebook group. Once they're in the Facebook group, they're then in a group with 1,700 other young leaders from all around the country. And then this year in 2020, we ran 4 month-long challenges. So we asked the community, we're like, hey, we're going to run these 4-week challenges. We've got this lead model, learn, experiment, accelerate, deliver. We're going to have guest speakers. We're going to have employers. What do you want to learn about? Here are 10 options. And so the top 4 they voted on were productivity, careers, health, and entrepreneurship. So we're like, cool, let's do it. So we ran the first one. We're like, we're going to run a 4-week challenge, and a couple hundred people signed up. We had some groups come in. Tesla came in and did an event. Canva came to one. Microsoft came in and ran an event. We had the team from Give a Grad a Go. We made ebooks, we made videos, we put them in little chat groups. We did peer-to-peer mentoring, so like partnered everyone up with one another. And we just kept trying things. And then at the end of the month, we just said, all right, what did you think? What did you like? What didn't you like? And the next month we kind of changed it, and we ran some networking events, and we kept the good stuff and did careers, and then we did health, and then entrepreneurship. And each month we kept kind of learning and listening and asking questions, pulling the good stuff, keeping it, and the things that didn't work, people were like, yeah, that was okay, but could do without it. We just cut it. So it's kind of for us, it's like 1, trying lots of things, 2, asking for feedback, and then 3, really learning from the lessons of what are people saying, what do they want, and not worrying too much about this product or the service or the offering, but focusing on the problem. It's like, your problem is making friends, building relationships. Okay, great. Are we solving that? Yes or no? And we're only successful if we're helping you solve your problem. And our product and service can change. Like we went online, now we do it in Zoom, but the business grew because we could be in Zoom, we're still solving the problem. So that'd be a big thing. There's a really good book, which is a startup kind of book, but it's called The Lean Startup by Eric Ries. And if people are interested in it, he talks about the build, measure, learn cycle. And then instead of like, I'm going to build this thing forever and then launch it, it's like, I'm going to build it, launch it and test it, see if it works, get some feedback and learn, and then build again. And his idea is like, you go around in that circle as many times as possible. And that's been a big thing for us, is like just going around in the circle and learning. Yeah.